Are you bored living a mediocre life? We were too, and we know how to change that. Each week, we'll leave our comfort zones to explore a new topic, then step onto our soapboxes, a safe space to sound off on our latest adventure. Come explore with us. All opinions are welcome. This is a mindset. This is a lifestyle. This is Siren Soapbox.
Hello, fellow explorers. Welcome to Siren Soapbox. We're on a mission to explore beyond comfort zones, and we're really starting to make waves. We are honored to be 130th in self-improvement podcasts in the UK. Ready to take the first step outside of your comfort zone? Dive into sirensoapbox.com, where you will find links to our blog, magazine, YouTube channel, and movie club. So many ways to explore. Pick one today and experience life outside of your comfort zone. You may or may not know this, but in order to be a siren here, you have to be a diver. And it finally dawned on us that we are almost 100 episodes into this podcast, and we have yet to do a show about diving. That was until some of us watched the 2022 movie 13 Lives and challenged the rest of us to watch. According to RottenTomatoes.com, 13 Lives recounts the incredible true story of the tremendous global effort to rescue a Thai soccer team who was trapped in a cave during an unexpected rainstorm. Faced with insurmountable odds, a team of the world's most skilled and experienced divers, uniquely able to navigate the maze of flooded, narrow caves, joined with Thai forces and more than 10,000 volunteers to attempt a harrowing rescue of the 12 boys and their coach. With impossibly high stakes and the entire world watching, the group embarks on their most challenging dive yet, showcasing the limitlessness of the human spirit in the process. To add to this challenge, we also watched 13 Lost, the untold story of the Thai cave rescue. And for those that are able, visit a cave. Let's find out how the Sirens did. But first, if at any time the conversation gets too intense, this safe word is
Mango. Mango.
First up on our soapbox is Mur.
Well, I avoided watching 13 Lives for as long as possible because I want all of my experiences with scuba diving to be happy ones. And watching those first diving scenes with the British divers, it really made me feel very anxious. And when they showed them rescuing the man who was working on the pump, I could feel his anxiety too. And then seeing the actual footage of Ben Reymanents diving the cave in the documentary 13 Lost, again, brought back those panic feelings. Being an empath is hard, friends. According to Ron Howard's version of the story, the British divers delivered a dive briefing to the Navy SEALs after the boys were found. And listening to that briefing as a diver just made my heart sink. I panicked during my dive training in 10 feet of water in a swimming pool. I can't imagine what it was going to be like. I just couldn't imagine what it was going to be like taking those young men out of the cave, having zero dive experience. And without the work and the bravery of Ben and his dive buddy and friend Maxime, those boys may not have been found alive. And I can't forget about the over 100 people who worked tirelessly to reroute the water off the mountain to try and help keep the excess water out of the cave. The whole story is just completely fascinating. I'm glad I took the time to watch the movie and the documentary. It was well worth my time. Sarah, do you remember the story of the soccer team before we watched the movies?
I'm not sure what was happening in my life back in June of 2018. I even looked at my calendar to see if I could find something big that would explain why I knew so little about what happened to the soccer team after they were trapped in the caves. At the time, I do remember hearing about it, but I didn't follow the story very closely. And that might sound unkind, but Mur, I'm a little bit like you. I often won't follow a story that I imagine may end up being tragic. I suppose it's a mental health preservation technique of sorts. So when I started watching the movie, the documentary, and the YouTube video, it was with absolutely no knowledge of what happened other than the boys and their coach were somehow brought out alive. I don't know if I can adequately express the absolute astonishment I felt at multiple times during each thing that I watched, but the absolute astonishment that I felt when I realized exactly how the rescue was accomplished. As an anesthesiologist, I intensely related to the skepticism that Richard Harris initially felt when presented with the idea of anesthetizing these boys to bring them out. In the documentary that he was in, Richard Harris describes very eloquently all the reasons why it was an absolutely foolhardy, if not potentially murderous idea. Now, as I was watching with hindsight knowledge that it all worked brilliantly, I was able to watch with an immense amount of respect for all the planning and pre-troubleshooting that went into getting it done. I have to admit that I did focus quite a lot on the anesthesia aspect of the rescue, but I just related to it so intensely. Talk about comfort zones. I like doing my anesthetics in a comfy operating room with all my toys around me. And it's not a 6-hour dive for someone to bring me a new mask if the one that I have doesn't fit exactly right. Watching him anesthetize those boys and teach non-medical folks how to redose was giving me palpitations the entire time. Now, as far as my cave diving experience, I did a cenotes dive in Mexico back in 2005, I think it was, and I really enjoyed it. We were single file behind a guide, nothing too crazy. As I understand it, this was a cavern dive, not a cave dive, so there was always supposed to be a visual on natural light. I mean, not that we could get up to that crack in the ceiling and climb out, but details. But I'm not really convinced that you can call what these rescuers did cave diving either. I think, was it Ben that described it as underground, underwater, whitewater rafting. So I'm so glad that we did this, we're doing this episode. I like that we were able to see the incredible teamwork that culminated in the saving of these boys and their coach. I think we probably only got a glimpse of the challenges facing the different teams, cultures, and specialists, but I love that our listeners are going to be able to see just what amazing things that can happen outside of a comfort zone. Jess, tell us about what you thought of the whole thing. Oh, Liz, I'm giving it to you, aren't I, Liz? Why don't you tell us about what you thought of the whole thing?
Yeah, I have to say, even just talking about it again just makes me hold my breath. And obviously I was here in Thailand. I was pregnant at the time with my second daughter, and it was just on the news absolutely everywhere. And watching the movie and this particular documentary did help to fill in some gaps. But like you say, I think we will never know the extent of it. And it was so many people playing a part. Prior to watching 13 Lives and 13 Lost, I had no desire to go cave diving. It's not for me. And after watching it, I now definitely have no desire to do it at all. I go exploring with my girls a lot. And if I get into any kind of place where I can't see light, then it's a no-go. I get an element of claustrophobia. So maybe that's something I need to work on, because, you all know that I like a challenge. Most of my scariest dives have been in Indonesia, where the currents are very unpredictable, or they can change very quickly to kind of up, down, side to side, spinning around. So it did remind me of my scariest dive when I saw Ben in the conditions. And again, just, holding the breath. Famous shotgun dive in Komodo National Park, where you're literally shot out at the end. Unless you've been briefed very well, if you dive it when it's like crazy currents, then, it's mental. And I ended up with 3 people, no dive guides, anything, and kind of had to climb our way out and had to step up. Again, when these situations happen, we have to step up. But a plan was so important. I was able to leave these advanced divers who were terrified, 20 bar, terrified. So it just gave me, again, a bit of an insight. It's nothing like what you guys went through on this rescue and the lead up to it. But we eventually got out safe, and we had this beautiful bumphead parrotfish school, and then some devil rays come by. It was probably my best dive in some respects. I did have to step up. My other scary experience was doing my Tech 45 dive, when you have to swim down at 20 meters or something with your mask off. And again, just not being able to see was terrifying. This big German, my buddy had to hold my hand the whole way. So just learning about the visibility that Ben and the other rescue divers had to go through, I could not breathe. Like, it just makes me, even thinking about it. So yeah, I certainly relived the whole experience. And I was emotional, as I think a lot of people were, because it was that connection, understanding a little bit more, and thinking what could have happened. We don't want to think of that. But again, fair play watching Ben described the dives, putting the line out, how important that was, the actual rescue procedure. I just can't even fathom the different steps in this rescue procedure. So hats off to the thousands that were involved. Maybe one day I'll dive the cenotes in Mexico as a free diver or something, but I'm not game for anything more than that, I'm afraid. What about you, Jess? You into cave diving?
Oh, no. So I remember hearing this story and very loosely following it while it was happening. I will admit that I don't watch the news, so I remember being happy when all the boys were rescued, but I didn't think about it much more than that. Then last year, I saw there was a documentary about the rescue. One Saturday, I decided to watch. Talk about intense. I didn't realize how much went into this rescue and how many different aspects had to be handled, like diverting the water so the caves didn't continue to flood and the coordination of mapping everything. It's absolutely amazing to me that so many people came together and from all corners of the globe to help these 13 people. When I saw that there was a movie about the same thing, I decided to give it a watch, mainly because I love Viggo Mortensen ever since he's been Aragorn. I was happy to see how they didn't try to make everything more dramatic, especially because the story itself is already very dramatic. I also watched the documentary 13 Lost on YouTube, and I thought it was good for a different view of the events. Watching all these stories about the same event has astounded me that all the boys came out alive. My heart breaks for Sam, from the Thai Navy SEALs who lost his life, and I'm in awe of anyone who does cave diving and rescue diving. I tip my hat or my face mask to you. The only caves I've ever dove, you can see the entry, exit, or the surface, so I don't feel trapped. Not seeing the exit is a big no-go from me, and watching these movies definitely cemented that. Elsie, how was watching these movies from the aspect of being a DSO?
13 Lives was difficult for me to watch. In another lifetime, I had a career as a dive safety officer. We're trained to call dives before they come emergencies and know what steps to take if one occurs. There are plenty of dives that I called because of safety concerns and divers that I've pissed off because I would not let them enter the water without the proper gear. While watching 13 Lives, I literally had so many questions about how to run an emergency operation like that for 3 weeks. Also, why did no one think of small faces for a full face mask? There's always going to be chaos and miscommunication during events like this, and it really stressed me out that it seemed to be like multiple parties were not quite getting it in sync. Divers are a different breed of people. There's a lot of ego and trying to see whose tank is bigger, if you get my drift. I was so confused as to how they were lasting so long on a tank. Were they staging tanks? That part was unclear. Although when watching 13 Lost and saw Ben on a rebreather, it started to make a lot more sense. I enjoyed 13 Lost a lot more than 13 Lives because it did help to answer some of the technical questions that I had about diving. It was good to see a few other perspectives from that rescue. It truly was a group effort, and every single person played a vital role in the boys being discovered and rescued. Cave diving is one of my least favorite ways to dive, next to cold diving. I did visit a cave for this. Inadvertently, our family has a theme every year, and this year it just so happens to be caves. So this was our fourth. We went to Lewisburg Cave, and as we entered, they pointed to a pond and said that is the water being pumped out of the cave. Having watched both movies the night before, it was a bit unnerving. We got a quarter of a mile in, and the tour guide cut the lights. You couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. I cannot imagine what the boys went through and their incredible bravery. Moreover, the bravery of every single diver that was involved as they entered those muddy waters. TC, were you excited to watch this movie?
First time I heard about the movie was when Dino's son Brandon watched it, then told us that we needed to watch it. My response was, nope. As a general rule, I only watch light, happy, funny things. I don't love the idea of choosing to be stressed out for hours. Dino wouldn't let me off the hook. I had to watch it, but only if he would tell me in advance which person died. That was the agreement, the only way I would watch the movie. I watched the movie 13 Lives, a documentary, and 13 Lost, the untold story of the Dive Cave rescue. I'm still amazed that this happened. I'm amazed at what the rescuers went through to save the kids. I'm amazed by the kids' positive spirit and their gratitude. Every time I watched any one of these rescue shows, I just couldn't get over that this rescue was successful. It is absolutely incredible. I have very little interest myself in cave diving. I like caves and I like diving, but I don't really want to mix those two things. My very first dive without my dive instructor, shout out to Scuba Steve Allen, was at a resort in Mexico. I signed up for a cavern dive and reef dive. The cavern dive ended up being more like a cave dive. There was no air on the ceiling and you couldn't see the light shining through on one of the two dives. The water came up all the way to the top of the cave, so you couldn't surface if you needed to. I was a little worried about that. It was the first time I'd been without my instructor. It was a very fun dive, and I wasn't as nervous once I got started in the cave as I thought I would be. The scariest dive I've ever been on was in the Keys, the wreck of the Spiegel Grove. The current changed suddenly as we were on our way back. People were running out of air and panicking. They were knocking each other off the safety line. It was crazy. It was not at all that spirit of cooperation and calmness that we saw the divers exhibit during this rescue experience. In general, I dive to see the animals, and there aren't very many in a cave. And I love to watch how the rays of light play with the colors and make a pattern on the sand. And there's not a lot of sun shining through in a cave dive. My favorite dive is in the best conditions: sunshine, warm water, fish all around, very little current. This is why I moved to the Caribbean. I'm really not an extreme diver. Ben Reymanents is no stranger to diving in extreme conditions. He's the owner and founder of Blue Label Diving, a shop that specialized in technical diving and extreme diving training. His passion for diving began in 1982 and was inspired by a James Bond movie, For Your Eyes Only, when divers salvaged a computer hidden in a shipwreck. Ben has been diving, get ready for the list, in the Philippines, Taiwan, Mexico, Italy, PNG, Fiji, Maldives, Taiwan, Bonaire, Egypt, Tenerife, Thailand, France, Sri Lanka, Malta, Norway, Russia, Australia, Indonesia, and Scotland. And that's just to name a few. He can also teach courses in 5 different languages fluently: Dutch, English, French, Spanish, and German. And he also speaks Arabic and Thai. Ben was very closely involved with the cave rescue in Thailand in 2018. After the kids had been trapped for 3 days, Ben was called by a liaison of the Thai Navy SEALs and was asked to help. Just a few hours later, he was on a flight. He and his partner, Maxim Pelegica, laid most of the line during some of the very worst conditions. Sirens, please help me welcome Ben Reymanents, a true hero, to this episode of Siren Soapbox.
Welcome to the show, Ben.
Thank you so much for being here.
Legend.
Hey, thank you for having me. Thank you for staying up in the middle of the night.
Ben, we're curious, how many times while you were in that cave did you think you were going to die in that cave?
You not once, but you always think, okay, this was a. See, when you think you on the verge of okay, this was, I'm going to die, then your mind goes blank and you just try to fix it, and afterwards you think, okay, this was very close, but you never say, okay, I'm going to die. No, actually never. You always have that survival. You just keep trying it until you fix it. So I guess it's a difference between a survivor and somebody just gives up and drowns, I guess.
So maybe the question needs to be, how many times did you have to figure out how you weren't going to die very optimistically? Because it looked so dangerous and scary so many times.
I think there was about 2 times that I thought I was going to get stuck and being sucked in, and I was going to be found in summer when in winter when the cave dries out. And yes, so but you need the discipline to push these thoughts away and keep going, because there's no rescue team, because you are the rescue team.
You are the rescue team, yeah.
So in the YouTube video, was that actual real footage of, I think it was Max yanking you back out from that when you were stuck at one point?
There's a few clips. The actual part where I got stuck, the visibility was zero. You can't see anything because there was so much mud flowing past me that there was nothing to be seen. So a small part we had to reenact, like when I got stuck, because to get people a little bit of an idea. But it's quite clear which footage is real because there's scratches on the screen and so on. But just that small part is, we had to reenact. It's in a real cave, not in a studio like that, like the most of the movies.
Hearing that piece of the story where you were going to get stuck and Maxine was pulling you out inch by inch, that was very scary for me. I can't imagine experiencing that in real life. It actually, I didn't talk about this during my soapbox, but I also have no interest in cave diving. It's just not my thing. I dive in a quarry.
It's people die in quarries too.
Yeah, they do. I mean, I dive in a quarry here in Ohio, and sometimes the visibility is pretty terrible, but I can just follow my bubbles and be safe, get to a surface and be safe.
Yeah. How many of you have been to Thailand?
I think just Liz.
Just Liz.
Just Liz. Well, you should know that most tourists that go to Thailand, they rent a motorbike. And I was actually curious last month, so I Googled it. And apparently, tourists hiring a motorbike in Thailand is more dangerous than cave diving as a general statistics. Actually, it's 10 times more deadly than cave diving. So there you go.
I can absolutely believe that, the crazy drivers on the road. I think, again, it must take a different level of mental mindset, though, in cave diving. I guess maybe a lot of people drop out. They decide, oh, yeah, this sounds like a cool additional qualification as a diver, and maybe they're not cut out for it. I mean, do you find there's a high dropout rate when you've taught cave divers?
No. Well, see, in the beginning, when you the usual course takes about a week. It's quite intense and physical, both physical and mental, because the first 2 days your brain says this is terrible, because you have to throw all the emergency skills at them, like loss of air, loss of a mask, loss of your body, loss of the line, and people fail these skills, so they come up and they say, this is not for me. I'm failing all the time. And I would say, just give me 2 days. In 2 days, you will feel better. After 3 days, you can see the eyes open up, the shoulders drop, and they're like, hey, this is actually quite nice. And after the 4th day, they come out of the water and they can't stop talking, and they're all happy. And so it's a bit of a transformation is needed. But I think I only had one dropout in more than 350 cave students that I've certified. So
wow, that's impressive.
You got to be a little bit passionate in your teaching, of course. So if you have the passion and you are like the normal massive resort diving instructor says, oh, you can't clear your mask. Okay, not for you. Next. Then of course it's next. I'm sure you've seen the factories in Australia or Honduras or Egypt. People just go in big masses, or Koh Tao in Thailand. So it's different discipline.
I know people who like to snorkel and then they learn to dive and they no longer enjoy snorkeling. Do you enjoy diving in perfect conditions like I described in the Caribbean, where the temperature's just right and the sun is shining and you're on a reef and there are fish and turtles everywhere? Or do you miss the cave?
Of course, I enjoy it. You know, it's a friend of mine early this year, Shaf, he had a 50-hour dive in the Maldives, and I was one of the safety divers. And it's at 6 meters of water, and your tank lasts for like 3 hours, and you don't need a light. You just, like you say, the sun rays are playing on the sand, and there's eagle ray, of course, it's stunning. But if I would, because I lived in the Maldives for 6 months, and after a while, you're craving the challenge, and it becomes very predictable. So then you go searching for pelagics, big sharks, or deeper, or in this case, caves.
Yeah, I'm okay with the predictable, especially if it's the sun rays playing on the sand and eagle rays swimming overhead. I'm okay with that.
What's your favorite? There's quite a few cave dives in Thailand, isn't there? Is that one of your favorite cave dives, would you say, or have you done the really deep one at Sakyao?
Yeah, there was a long and a very deep one. I don't think anybody's been back because it's not the prettiest. It's quite narrow, and the visibility is not that great. Anything you touch, the visibility just goes. There's some very nice caves in Thailand. Deeper to the south is Song Hong Sinko, which is massive, and we still, after 10 years, we still haven't explored the entire. We still don't know where it goes, which keeps it fascinating. I mean, see, people supposedly have been to the moon, and I think 2,000 people been on top of Mount Everest, but I think less than 10% of all the caves on this planet have been dived. So just coming somewhere in an area where you can touch a piece of rock and you're the very first human that comes there, it's very powerful. Gives this really explorer feeling.
You were I don't know if you were the first, but you were one of the first people to ever dive the cave where these boys were rescued as well. Is that correct?
Well, see, it's too long to get everything in the documentary and in the movie. So, because first the Navy SEALs and a few friends of mine, they could actually walk to the T junction where the kids took a left turn, and luckily they laid a few lines and stuff, and then the whole thing flooded. Then the British, they were there a few days before me. The conditions got a bit better. They managed to dive to chamber 3, and they found these 4 engineers that were left behind to dive them out. And then, but past chamber 3, when it was flooded, yes, I was the first, and then me and Maxime were the first one to push it. But then, see, you're stating that I laid most of the line. That's actually not true. It was a team effort, and if you put all the map together, I think the British laid a little bit more, but also the Navy SEALs, who had no cave experience, not cave training, nothing. They laid a lot of line when we were asleep, so we were rotating 3 teams: me, Maxime, and the British, the Navy SEALs, and so 24/7, 200 meter, 200 meter, 200 meter to get to the kids, and yeah, the way it takes it all.
I just remember, so again, I dive in quarries, and Scuba Steve that Tracy mentioned earlier was telling us a story one time of one of our dive instructors was like coming off of a platform with a class behind her, and she just ran smack into something because the visibility was terrible. And then I was watching 13 Lost and seeing, I guess it was footage of your GoPro just like banging into cave walls. I just can't imagine what that was like.
You have a helmet, it helps. But yes, your hands are, okay, and just to avoid any wrong ideas that potential cave divers might have, in these conditions you do not start a dive.
Right.
Yeah, you never start training. So the standards dictate that you should have at least a minimum of 10 feet of visibility at the start of every dive, experienced or not experienced. So of course, extreme situations demand extreme measures, and well, who else was going to go there? See, we sent probes to the moon, and now they took this asteroid with it, but we do not have a robot that can independently be let in the water and go and search. But technology does not have that. It's amazing, So it's not even animals can do this. I think Russians trained some dolphins, but it didn't end up so well, and I think it was not very animal friendly. So it's really humans. Humans are the only animals that can explore caves, even with zero visibility, because it really is feeling and creating a mental map in your head okay, this is going too narrow. You feel on the floor. This is gravel. This should be the center point. This is clay, not the way. And this way, just inch, hand by hand. And you can't think that it's another 2 kilometers, because then it's very demotivating.
Yeah.
Just try and see where you end up.
Can you imagine everyone except Ben diving in a situation where you're diving because you're the only one who will or can do the dive? I can't even imagine getting ready to go into a dive where that is the situation. I've never experienced anything even remotely close to that. It's amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. And I'm glad that you explained that a little bit, Ben, about the conditions. It's not like this was an ideal dive and, we were doing this for fun. It had to be done. Somebody had to go in there and start the search.
A lot of people, they think, there's a term called adrenaline junkies. People jump off mountains and so on. But when you get stuck, or when you realize it's a very close call, adrenaline is no fun. It's not a nice feeling. It's really like, it makes you feel very, very, very annoyed. It's not fun at all. It's when it wears off, then you sort of giggling and as the emotions wear off. But no, so people that think that people jump out of planes do it for adrenaline, it's a very big misconception, because it's trying to suppress that adrenaline that makes these extreme sports fun, getting sort of into the mental zone, I guess, similar to meditation.
Can I ask a question about the Thai Navy SEALs? After everything, I know, you were included in the award ceremony and that, and you spoke so highly of them. You were part of their team, and I think it was just wonderful to learn that. Did you do any additional consulting or training with them to possibly prepare for, God forbid, a future event like this? Given that they're only diving with tanks and side mounts, are they on rebreathers yet? Like, I think you mentioned rebreathers in it, so I'm just curious about that side.
Yeah. It's a bit strange, because before it started, we're trying to teach them side mount, like with 2 tanks on the sides, allowing them to go into smaller passages, because they were done with normal recreational equipment, actually more based on that, because they did not have a BCD. So just a wetsuit and a basic harness and a single tank on it. So we tried to teach them that, but of course they've had such a long training that it felt very awkward for them, and they, in the end, they didn't go for it. A funny story happened. The PCD that I'm wearing for side mount, the manufacturer called me. Says, Ben, this guy says he's assistant from the king. He says he wants to buy these BCDs. Says, is this a scam? He says, no, it's the king. But it's a German number. Well, the king lives in Germany. What should I do? Well, sell. This is your day. So, but yeah, they didn't catch it. Also, they had rebreathers, actually very, very expensive high-end military rebreathers, which were delivered for us. And Maxim, who is ex-military, he was preparing it for them, because I could see that the Navy SEALs were a bit rusty with the preparations. I prepared all of them, and in the end, they never used it, which I think they were lacking training or not comfortable with it. So, yes, so most people, I was actually the only one, and Miko as well, that were using rebreathers. And the rest was just diving with a lot of tanks. So the biggest effort actually was people carrying tanks into the cave, clipping into the lines, back and forward. Sherpas. That was the biggest manpower needed. I think Shell or Chevron choppered in pallets with 800 scuba tanks with a helicopter in. So there's compressors running 24/7 to fill these tanks. And then there was, of course, the oxygen tanks that the boys needed to connect to their full face masks to be pumped. That's a whole different story as well.
So there were tanks
no
staged.
rebreathers.
There were tanks staged
Yeah.
throughout the cave.
Yes, yes. But by the time of the actual extraction of the kids, the water was low enough in about 80% of the cave that it was waist high. So there was actually only, I think, 3 places, might be wrong, 2 places needed diving, but nothing more than like 300 feet or something.
Oh, that's
So,
good to know.
yeah. All depends who's talking, because it's not like it's a paved road. It's very rugged and very heavy and sharp terrain. So I think the carrying was harder over the dry parts than if we could just float it out.
That's a good point. And these kids were all knocked out, so they couldn't help.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I don't know. Sarah, I know you talked a little bit about being an anesthetist, how that decision that they made to do that was that had to be a really hard decision. But I don't see any other way that they would have gotten them out. I mean, sheer panic. I'm sure that they would have panicked. No experience, and then having to dive in those conditions, it would have just been awful.
Well, I guess they got, when they were bringing out those 4 guys that they found at that one spot, I can't remember where, the engineers that got trapped, just describing how difficult it was to bring them out a very short distance. I think that was what made them realize there was no way that they could bring the boys out that way. And you're right, Ben. When you watch the movies and the movie and the documentary, you do get the impression that the kids are underwater the entire time. So imagining them trying to bring the kid out diving, but even still. But anyway, looking back on it and with hindsight, it was the only way to do it, and it was brilliant to think of it. But I can just only imagine how those first phone calls went to the anesthesiologist. He must have just thought that they were insane, because this is just not something that you ever do. You're always so careful. You've got the right doses, the right monitors. But then it was brilliant to monitor their breathing just by watching the bubbles coming out of the mask and things like that. It was just the way they were able to troubleshoot everything. I was just in awe as I think of myself sitting there in my nice operating room with everything exactly where I know where it is. And I'm just ever so slightly OCD. So my syringes are all lined up in the right, they all face the same direction. And, I can't imagine doing it the way they
And
did.
everything's clean.
Yes. Visibility is great.
Not underwater. There's that.
No, I'm not worried about myself breathing. And so it was just amazing to watch that part.
Well, Richard Harris was against it at first. He said that no way. Actually, I think the initial idea came from the French cave rescue team. They had a whole team of 15 people with 2 doctors, also anesthesiologists, cave divers. And they wanted to come, but then they weren't allowed in. There's some political things, whatever. And the other thing, they called the head of the team, called Rick Stanton, saying, "Hey, don't you need us?" I said, well, I said, "Well, we have a plan. We've tried this before." And sent me the plan. And the plan actually had the sedation with the ketamine and other drugs. And that's when the plan was born and was presented. But yes, Richard Harris initially was against it, but then when nothing else came up, they sort of went for that. And luckily there were airspaces, because you're an anesthesiologist, the half-time of ketamine, it doesn't, see, the extraction time is 2.5 hours. It doesn't last 2.5 hours. So they needed this airspace to re-administer. But of course, the divers had very sterile needles in their pockets in that body water to, and they would just stab it straight through the wetsuit. So that's also why they went in quarantine, with make sure no deep tissue infections and so on.
Oh, you mean they didn't have little alcohol wipes to put underneath the wetsuits and they weren't gloving up, double gloving, putting on yeah.
I think there was a bottle of J. Americans bought a bottle of J. Daniels into the cave, but that was after the last boy came out. That was cracked and emptied quickly. So that was the only.
It was the only alcohol involved.
Yeah.
What was the temperature of the water inside that cave?
18 degrees Celsius.
Oh my
so
gosh.
you can do the conversion. In the beginning, I was in a dry suit, which was way too hot for the dry parts, because the dry parts were 26 degrees and very humid. So you can do the conversion as well.
That's about 64 degrees Fahrenheit.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
It's cold.
Nope.
So
I mean, the quarry's colder than that.
Yeah.
It's-
Why do you think I moved?
Exactly. Exactly. It's about 83 in the water where I live.
But then my dry suit rips, and I had to resort to my wetsuit. And actually, you're fitting so hard in that it was actually perfect.
Huh.
So yeah.
Yeah,
I was
dived
thinking
in a-
the physical aspect of just like swimming against the current for, however long the currents are, and then just like, 2.5 hours just out. And your sessions of mapping and laying the line, Ben, God, I think that just watching it, I wanted to sleep for 3 days.
Yeah, it looked exhausting.
The diving was one part. It's the dry parts in the beginning, because it was so hot and you had to drag all your tanks over these muddy, rocky slopes. That was actually hard.
And the
harder
oxygen
than,
level was low.
So they say, but to be really funny, apparently the oxygen sensor was old and faulty, so it never got confirmed that the oxygen level was low. What in the first chambers, there was a lot of, somebody had a great idea. The first Brits that came in had a great idea of putting a diesel pump in the last room to pump the water. And that, of course, those fumes, they stuck in there when the cave sealed up. So that gave massive headaches trying to haul your kit over these rocky parts. And then every time you got back in the water, it was almost like a relief to cool down and just sit there like, oh. And then swimming again and hauling again. So after like 3.5 hours, you actually got to the diving part. We came to camp 3, where all the Navy SEALs were, and all the tanks were, and all the lights were, and there was like a radio, good old fashioned radio, and from there on there was no support. So then you were sort of by yourself, and then it was another. We did 6-hour trips from Camp 3 onwards. Well, we had power bars and had a big pouch with isotonics in my butt that kept me fed and hydrated. But yes, it was a good workout. I think I lost a few kilos.
What's our new weight loss plan, Sirens? Just kidding.
It's not mine.
Mango. I didn't even think about the whole like having to like eat and drink while you're down there, because you're down there all day, literally. I didn't even think about that.
Oh, your body will tell you. Your legs just go to rubber, and your throat just gets singing. You're like, okay, I need to eat and drink something. Maxime and I always had spare power bars and some fluid in our pouch, and spare torches, just in case if we would find the kids, we couldn't just joke there. Oh, sorry, we ate everything.
So when you're going through a high stress, and not just mental stress, but physical stress, what sort of positive self-talk was going on in your head to keep going?
Well, of course, your brain says the whole time, like, go back. You've gone far enough, you've gone further than anybody else has gone. So why are you risking your life and stuff? Of course, then there is, because I saw these parents outside there praying and crying, and then you're like, oh, what if it would be my kids, So, and then just keep going. Okay, let's push 50 more meters. Okay, hey, we came this far. Let's push a bit more. When it came to Camp 3, and you look at the pool of mud, it's like a small roll pool, and you look at it, and your brain says that there's no way. But all these Navy SEALs are looking at you like, oh, you are the hope, with this smile and these that you really you can't disappoint them. So I said, okay, I'll try. And the first day I tried, and I turned around after I think 100 feet or something. I just got stuck everywhere and got entangled in old electric cables and total mess. So I came out, and I'm really sorry. And that's when initially I gave up. On the way back, I met the British, and they says, "Oh, how you go?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is madness. Yeah, it's madness. We should stop this. People will die." And then they sort of better the admiral. Listen, this is not going to happen. And then the British left, and they packed their bags. And then I went back the next day. Says, "Okay, I'll need to buy time." Says, "We can't do this unless we have like a lot of rope and helmets and this. But then the Navy SEALs went in by themselves, and that's something that we didn't think of. And they were going to kill themselves. So I'm like, okay, I'm a cave instructor. At least I know when I'm getting really in trouble and to turn around. They don't, so better me than them. And okay, keep these guys out. I'll try instead. That was actually the only drive, because the chances, looking at the map, it's thinking there's 2 more kilometers to go like this. You have very little hope. But then we sort of got lucky, I guess. Actually, the whole expedition, the whole setup, like you mentioned in the intro, and no more people died. And they go, I still cannot believe it. It's very unreal, because so many red flags and so many people without know-how were in there and diving, and so it's very sad for Sam. But yes, I'm surprised no more people stayed in that cave.
Do you remember the first time you heard that one of the kids was out and was alive? Like, do you remember that moment?
Yes. By the time I was very tired, and I just see after so long, your emotions sort of fade. It's like a roller coaster, and then they just go flatline. So I'm like, oh, really? And he's alive. Yes, he's alive. And actually, I think the first one or the second one was taken out with a helicopter, and then we heard he's in critical condition. Two were also the coach in critical condition, had to be brought with a helicopter. And another one, and then yes, I'm like, hey, there's a pretty good chance that this might work. Because everybody knew heavy rains were coming, and they're really holding, trying to prevent the ship from sinking with their finger. And
it just makes me feel all of those emotions of stress and nervousness hearing you say that again. I mean, I can't imagine just the impact of the stress. I understand you would almost have to go flat, like you were saying, just for your body to keep going.
Yes, you try to sleep, but you never know, because it was a bit of a organized chaos, to be honest, because the admiral who was in charge was sort of bypassed by the governor, and it was a big political minefield. He was trying to sort of direct it, but he had no cave experience, so he had to listen to a lot of people, and as you know, there were different parties involved. Suddenly there was like 1,000 cave experts that knew everything about cave rescue. And yes, to make sense through all this circus was crazy. Everybody had a better solution. Need to swim them out on stretchers, on this, and in the end, nobody had a solution. Actually, it's the French team that never made it there. They stood on the tarmac with, I think, 2,000 pounds of equipment, and actually never made it to the rescue. And it's their plan that worked. The foldable stretcher, the full face mask, and the sedation. Yeah, the French always lose. They never win wars, do they?
Smart French. So Ben, was
Wow.
this your first? I know that you're a very experienced cave diver. Was this your first cave rescue?
I normally do dead body recoveries. It sounds really bad.
Mm.
And I'm usually called to pick up a dead body in the Red Sea and so on. And some crazy diver would kill themselves, and I would go and pick them up, and picked up a few from the bottom in different stages of decomposition. So no, never had to. That's why the stress was much higher. If it's a dead body, then you're far more relaxed, and you're also trying to numb your mind, because being face to face with dead body is not the nicest thing. But
No.
yeah, somehow I guess it's less stressful than having young kids waiting to be rescued.
I could
But
see
also
that.
at the beginning, nobody knew that the boys would still be alive. And in fact, a lot of people thought that they wouldn't be or couldn't be. I mean, how could
Yes.
they be? Right?
Well, that was because as we passed through the T-junction, and this is really small, this really narrow passage, I'm laying the line, and then suddenly I saw on the roof, on the ceiling, these polystyrene swimming aid, with like My Little Pony and whatever, the Ninja Turtles, stuck on the ceiling. And I knew I was really, really close. And then suddenly, like, at this reality check, like, what am I? Next minute, I'm going to see floating, bloated kids, So, but then just look down and keep laying line and just focus on your
Your task.
1 meter. Yeah. So we didn't know what we were going to find. Half of my life, are they panicking? Are they going to jump on my face when they see me? Yes, it's totally unprepared.
So Ben, I'm sure there are going to be people that are inspired by your story to become rescue divers, just like how you were inspired to become a diver. What sort of advice would you have for somebody that is looking to do that as a career field?
Well, it's a very niche market. I wouldn't make my career out of it. Because most rescues are recoveries. If you look at the statistics of people that get stuck or lost in a cave, most of it is recoveries. Although there's quite a few success stories of people that found an air bubble and got stuck there. Actually, one of the British team later was diving in one of the caves in the US and lost a line and got stuck in an air bubble. And Ed Sirens, a pretty famous cave diver in the US, actually rescued the guy out alive. So, but I would advise any diver to do a rescue course anyway, because if you want somebody to be able to rescue you, then you should be able to rescue your buddy in the first place. So I think enrolling in a rescue diver course is always highly beneficial for any diver to do that. Becoming a rescue cave diver. I don't know. I feel myself very underqualified to do that, and I've been diving for 30 years, and so it's not like there is a course for this. There is one course, but it's recovery. So yes, but just pick up cave diving, like I say. Go to Mexico, see the pretty sight, and get inspired.
I've heard you mention here that he lost the line. Now I know you're laying line, and I'm sure maybe there's a reason why. Do you ever clip into the line when you're in a cave, just to make sure that you don't lose the line and not be able to find it again? Because I am, even in the movie, in you see how difficult it could be to sometimes keep a hold of the line. And I'm panicking as they're trying to grab the line again. Do you ever clip into the line? I mean, I'm sure there may be reasons why you can't. I don't know.
So there's two types of caves. There's flooded caves and there's dry caves. In dry caves, you can't just swim down and up. You need ropes, like climbing ropes. And that's when people clip in. With aids, they climb up and they descend with tools to go down the drops. But in cave diving, because the distances are quite big, we use just 2-3 millimeter small thin line that fit on a spool that you can carry. So that line is too thin to clip yourself into. And also, if you would clip yourself into and you would swim away something, the line would snap. So it's just a guide. You should never pull yourself on it. So just a guide that you can just follow, holding it very lightly with your hand. And in cave systems, there's always line. So there's never a cave system without line unless it's unexplored. So the moment somebody has explored it, there is a line, always. Now in this case, because of the heavy current, we knew people would go in there, are not cave trained. We knew people would be pulling the line, and that's why I told the commander, says you need thick climbing rope all the way to the kids. Also because tanks need to be clipped on it, and so this was an exception to the rule that we used this thick rope, which of course makes it much harder because a normal cave line you can put almost like a mile on a spool. Now we were looking at bags of 200 meters, 600 foot bags of rope that we were pushing at them. So every time the bag is empty, you have to go back and get another bag, which was our reach was very limited. You could only take 2 bags in the team.
Well, we've reached the end of our chat today, Ben. We want to leave our listeners with a challenge this week to check out a cave in your area. And if you're a diver, maybe check out an underwater cave. Of course, be sure you have the proper training first. Don't just go entering a cave, my dive friends, without the proper training. But if entering a cave isn't your thing, watch the documentary 13 Lost on YouTube. No matter what you decide, tell us about it by using the hashtag Siren Soapbox on all the social medias. Ben, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your story with us. Do you want to tell our listeners where they can find you?
Obviously on the YouTube 13 Lost, and please subscribe because this was a friend of mine did this documentary to sort of praise people that were not in all the movies. So please subscribe if you can. And yes, Blue Label diving if you want to do a course. I currently live in Finland. I teach around Scandinavia, in Europe and in France, but basically anywhere. And that's it. I'm glad I could be a part of this podcast and shed some light on all your questions. And yes, had a good time.
I mean, we could probably talk to you for the next 3 hours about this, but we only committed to an hour. Thank you, Sirens, for joining us on this episode. And thank you, fellow explorer, for listening to this episode. Check out our website, sirensoapbox.com, for a mega dose of the Sirens. And check us out on TikTok, where we've been posting lots of videos about our preparation for our 100th episode. And until next time, dive in, stay curious, and be happy. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Siren Soapbox, and a special thank you to C Strings for providing our music. Snag their latest EP from iTunes today. Follow the Sirens on all the social medias, and don't forget to tell your friends about us. Like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'll catch you next time on another episode of Siren Soapbox.